Okay, I think it's 9 o'clock, right? So my name's Pat DiBurro, and I run a Martin Service Center in New Hampshire. I work on Martin, Taylor, and Collings guitars. I work with those three manufacturers.
Where are you in New Hampshire?
Exeter, right by the coast. We have 18 miles of coast, and then it's Massachusetts, south, Maine, north. And I work just on those three brands, and usually every 4 months I visit one of the three factories that I work with, and I've been doing that for years and years. So I just keep going back to the repair departments and training in them. And I've been with Martin since '93, Taylor '94, and Collings, I think 2008. So if you have a question about those manufacturers or what they do, I might be able to answer it. It can be off topic, just while you got me here. Say, you know. So this presentation is basically about explaining the 7 or so different neck attachments that Martin used, how to identify them, and how to remove them safely, as best I could tell you in a couple hours. Okay, so the first one was the clock key. And CF Senior he worked for Stauffer in Austria for I think 14 years. He was apprenticed there when he was 15, and he was the foreman when he left. And that's where he picked up his training, and he built in that Austro-German style. And one of the more interesting things about those guitars was the way the neck was attached. And I'm going to go kind of fast, so hopefully you can speed read. This was, if you've been to the museum, this guitar is there. It's an early CF Martin guitar, and you can see that kind of that clock key mechanism right there. Get to there we go. There's another shot of it. Even closer. One of the times that I was in the repair department there, they had this guitar laying on a rack. It was built by CF Senior and Henry Schatz, and it gave me a kind of a good opportunity to see just what was going on. And the whole key to the mechanism is this screw with the flange, that little cutout right there. And that flange, and then this little groove. John, you're the machinist, so you can chime in. That groove fits right here and sort of holds everything together. Let me back up here. There's a little drill hole here. That rod that you'll see in the next photo in the heel block goes in there. And all the neck does is it pivots back and forth off of that hole and that dowel up there. The screw that you saw will go into here. There's another shot of that rod, the pivot rod.
Is that a spruce neck block?
It is, and it's all cracked. Yeah. And that's it. Now, he only used that for about the first 10 years, and when he was in New York, and then after that, he totally abandoned it. Then came the ice cream cone heel. This was on the lower priced models, and then also some of the higher price models. The middle price models used a different type of neck attachment.
And when did they stop using the ice cream cone?
1890s. We're up into the 1890s, yeah. But it was at that point it was really just on the styles 16s, 17s, 18s, the lower priced. And it was typically made out of cherry or birch. And as I said, it was on the 16, 17, and 18s, although some double Fs or fine fancy models did have those. So here it is here. It's, I don't know if you guys have ever taken one apart. Uh-huh. You have, that's right, John. I have some photos you sent me. Basically, my opinion is there's enough of these in museums that when they do come into my shop and they are in need of a neck reset to correct the angle, I'll remove the neck and I'll do what's necessary to put them back into shape. Because I really like them to be, I want them to be played.
Yes.
I said, there's enough behind glass cases, so I'm going to take the neck off and reset it.
Well, I think the photos I gave you is from 1847.
Oh, okay. Those will be coming out. Here's another shot of that ice cream. It's a two-piece neck. And this is one of John's shots. Here it is here. You can see pretty well that secondary joint here. So you've got the neck, and then you've got the heel as a completely separate component. And while I have this photo up, I just want to talk quickly about bar frets. You may know something of them. The frets here are bar. We call them bar frets. They're essentially the same thickness going into the kerf as they are coming up over the fingerboard. There's no T or anything like that.
Can I interject something, please?
Sure.
Okay, this happens to be a guitar I actually own now. If you take a look, the miter joint on the heel, I'd reset this neck and the neck didn't hold. That joint had failed and I had to take that apart. So I called Martin and asked him if they had any information about it. And I talked to Lon Werner and he said, you want to take it apart on purpose because they'd never taken one apart. So I did end up taking it apart and you'll get to see some of the nuances of the joint. And all I can, right there, it is a fascinating piece of artistry.
It is. The way that they join this is really amazing. I'll go in here.
You see that little tenon there? Sorry if I'm interrupting.
No, please.
That little tenon, it took me about 4 attempts to get this back together. That is a keyed dovetail tenon pin. And the secret to making this joint work is that had to come in and grab the heel first, and then you tapped it in for an interference fit on the heel, and then it grabbed the neck barrel. And that was the secret to that joint to make it work. And all I can say is I was in awe at the craftsmanship.
Yeah, absolutely. Traditionally when we pull necks, this is a dovetail. When we pull these necks, we like to put some pressure, if possible, on the end of the what would be the heel cap, and on this point you can see it's so delicate there, you can't put any pressure there. So really what you're doing is just kind of wiggling the neck, wrangling it, and hoping everything comes out in one piece. And it's been my experience that doesn't always happen. So quite often the neck comes out.
As far as I'm informed, that is a Staufer.
Oh, no kidding. I haven't seen one of those, but that makes sense, yeah. You've seen an Austrian?
On Staufers.
Okay.
And I think Martin took it.
He took it with him, yeah. That makes sense because it came in, not long after, by the time he moved up to Cherry Hill up here. Okay, here's another view that John provided of the details. So, yeah. So kind of like the same situation John got into, I got into a bit of a jam. I tried pulling the neck off of this, it looks like a style 18 or 17, and the neck came off, but the heel remained in the guitar, and I needed it off of the guitar. And so what I came up with was this idea of taking a threaded screw and threading it down into that cone. Once again, you can see I didn't want to damage that nice fine point there. I didn't want to put any pressure on there. I would have crushed it. It would have looked terrible. So the bolt that I put in there was actually a hanger bolt. And that allowed me to put this little kind of coupling on there and make this jig, which I have right here if you want to take a look at it and pass it around. So that jig, I just made that because I got into this situation. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I put some steam down in there and very gradually tightened up the wing nut on the top, and that cone came out without incident. So that was just a way to get out of that situation. There it is there. So I kind of bailed myself out. This is just the body to that neck that I pulled out. Not too much to talk about here, other than if you look, it does have solid lining, which I always kind of liked. And that's kind of neat.
Did that one have 5 back braces?
I don't remember. That was a while ago. Do you remember guitars that you worked on too?
Yeah.
Well, I don't, man.
Well,
They
the
just,
fact that I ended up owning the guitar.
Oh,
that
that's
one-
true,
that one
yeah.
had 5 back braces in it.
wow. Yeah, I know. I don't remember 5. No, it seems always 4.
I
You had 5.
26,
Really?
that is pre-1860, also had 5.
I don't
But
think
they
I-
went to the dentils, the dentils by then.
Yeah, those are a pain.
Dentalones.
Yeah, yeah, teeth. Teeth they're called, right? And that. There's just another shot of just basically their mortise that they were using on those early guitars. Okay, so he.
About bar frets, and you got distracted.
What, bar frets?
Yeah, you started to say something.
Oh, well, what I was going to say about them, and it will come up in just a minute, is I wanted you to recognize that the guitars had bar frets, and I'll explain why in a second, actually. Okay, so CF, I think he was getting, he was in New York City, or dealing with people in New York City, and they really weren't all that great on those Viennese styles. They kind of wanted the more Spanish style, so he started transitioning to a Spanish appearance, but he didn't want to go with the real Spanish heel where they kind of, it's a, the neck and the heel block are all in one and you tuck the sides in. So he stayed with the dovetail. But as you can see, now his neck started to have more of a Spanish appearance, what we kind of consider to be normal now.
What guitar was that one that you had up there?
I don't remember. That one I grabbed off the internet. I think that's the only photo that I didn't take other than yours. Okay, so the bar frets. This is kind of why I was talking about it before. If you're going to remove a neck on a Martin guitar that has bar frets, you can pull the fret and drill down through that slot, and then hope that you can get that fret back in there and it looks halfway decent. Quite often, if the frets are well seated, it's going to come out and it's going to be kind of goofy, and it's a real mess. So on some guitars, I just decide I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to drill a hole right in the fingerboard. And it doesn't really show up on here, but what I do is when I'm looking at the Brazilian, I find a spot where there's a real good black patch, and I drill right in there. And then when I put my plug in there, I match the end grain so that it's pretty much invisible. You've got to really get down into it. So, that's maybe a little controversial, but I found that taking out that fret and trying to put it back in and make it look right is not always good.
You're saying specifically with bar frets?
Yes, yeah, just with bar frets, yeah. T frets is no issue at all. It's just if you've tried pulling out a bar fret that is welded attached, and it can be a real mess. You can chip out a lot of the ebony. So I just kind of went with the path of least resistance and just drilled a hole right adjacent to it and plugged it.
Are the bar frets originally just hammered in, or are they glued, or is there anything?
Well, what they do is they called it railroading, where they would take the bottom of the bar fret and they would hit it with a little hammer that was sort of to a point, like an upholsterer's, just like a spike. And then they would make these little divots, barbs, essentially. This is that same neck, and now you can see that hole in relation to the tenon. So I'm a little ways out. On this one, I probably could have drilled a hole even on the other side, but I was kind of, these earlier Martins, they're a little bit all over the place in terms of where the pocket is, where the air pocket is. There's one more shot of it. Okay, bar frets were discontinued in about 1934. With the bar frets for strength, Martin would put a ebony rod right in the center in there under the fingerboard extension. When they went to the T frets in 34, they needed a metal rod to make this stiff because they felt frets weren't going to do it themselves. So here's just a little information on when it actually came up. So here's the T-bar here. One of the interesting things about Martin, what they were doing in production, was they were putting a kink or a bend in the truss rod at about the 5th fret. And they were even milling the necks. From the 5th fret to the nut, the neck was actually milled down slightly. And it's a lot like what you were talking about yesterday, John, where under tension, it pulls up, and that's the area where it pulls up. So this is in the Martin repair department. There's the channel for the T. I think the T is my favorite non-adjustable truss rod that Martin used. They tend to be pretty straight and not really go too hollow.
Did they always bend them, or did they stop bending them later?
In the repair department, they always bent them, and according to Milt Hess, right until the end, they were always bending them. Yes.
They were bending.
Yeah, this is what he told.
Okay.
I don't know about the when they went to the square tube, they maybe didn't, but they did always on the T.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yes.
Glued in or just laying there?
It's glued in. Yeah, back then they just put some hide glue in there. Let's see if we can go back, and I'm not sure if we can see any traces. You can kind of see some traces of the adhesive, the hide glue in there. You know, just some brown stuff in there. I imagine that might be probably some hide glue.
So the kinks on like the fifth fret end, like that in the neck, they made the channel deeper there?
No, they did not. Nope.
Or they set it down?
No, they did not make it deeper. Their idea was that once you glued the fingerboard on and you looked at if you basically sighted the fingerboard, what you're going to see is this dip, you know, from the fifth fret going back. So did I explain that well?
Yeah, I just don't understand how the bar sits below the surface of the...
Well, the neck is milled too.
Yeah.
You said that the neck is milled?
I'll show you. Some of the following photos might make that clearer. Let's have a look. Okay, so here's a better shot of the bend. It seems like a really extreme bend right there. I mean, I don't know. It's not 20 thousandths. It's a lot more than that.
Okay, let's see. That would be. I would guess it's probably about a 16th.
Yeah, that's a lot. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure if when he actually put this in, if he thought it was too much and he lessened it. But so there's another shot of getting ready to glue that in. This is Milt Hess. He was the structural repair guy for decades, and I learned a lot from him. He was really cool. So what he's doing here is he's just got that T-bar in there, and he's putting a bend on it. He's just kind of loose. Now he's gluing it in, and he's got one of the more recent modern square tubes on top as a caul. They use a lot of yellow glue there, or white glue. It's high glue occasionally, but it's pretty much everything in the repair department goes out with some type of vinyl glue or aliphatic resin. Here's his clamping. He's got to, use all these singular cauls because he can't use a straight caul on the back because the neck is kicking backwards a little bit. There's another shot of it. Okay. So, I don't know why they did this. This is kind of wild. They were using the T from 34 up until 67. They used the T, and as I said, all the ones that come in that I look at, the necks are really good. They're not very rare do I see one that goes hollow or forward bow. In fact, you have to even be careful with those when you're refretting the T ones, because if you put in too big of a fret, you'll back bow it. It's very responsive because it's such a straight neck. But anyways, in 67, it must have been purchasing, I guess, I don't know. One of the thoughts about going to a square tube is maybe it was an easier production route because all you had to do was just route one straight little channel in there. You didn't have to do that secondary route for the T.
Well, the T-bar was manufactured where the square stock was readily available.
Sure.
So
Yeah, it probably was purchasing. Like,
Yeah.
hey, we can get this a lot cheaper.
Yeah, that's exactly what it
And
was.
wasn't it an issue of weight?
I don't think.
They weighed pretty close.
Yeah.
close?
They were. Yeah, I don't think that was a concern. Yeah, it's
Just
similar.
availability, and it was cheaper.
Yeah. So here's just a couple of their production numbers in terms of when they changed over. Kind of good to know for you guys. If you're taking in a guitar that has a really hollow neck, then and it's in that 67, 68 range, then you might think that it is a hollow square tube, which is more prone to forward bow, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah. Here's the tube. got it right here if you want to pass one around. This one here, I got from Stu Mack. It's actually a little better than what Martin has. That's stainless steel, and it seems to be a little stiffer. So if I, whoa, it's Fritz Weatherby. If I have to replace a square tube, I just buy the one from Stu Mack because I think they're really good as far as, works for me. I can get them. There's the end of it.
Is there a source to get the T-bars?
No. Do you have one, John?
I get it made.
You do, yeah. Just have them
Yeah.
made, yeah. But in all honesty, I have not had to replace one. I have had to remove one and rebend it, and it seemed to work good. I just flipped it around and used the other side to bend it.
These you replace because you find they're not strong enough?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And that's only on a situation where there's a huge hollow, huge. Maybe I'm talking 30 thousandths, under tension. In order to correct that, I correct forward bows by pulling out the frets, planing the fingerboard, and then refretting. Some people use heat to try and straighten it. I don't do that. And so if I have a 30 plus bow, then I'm going to have to remove so much material that it's going to be really thin out the binding or the fingerboard. So I might, depending on the budget, I might say, let's pull the the neck off and the board off, put a new rod in there. Okay. So that was the end of the square tube by 85. My understanding was that C.F. Martin III, Mr. Martin, did not want an adjustable truss rod in his guitars. And the salespeople were like, Mr. Martin, we got to put adjustable rod. Everybody has adjustable rods. It's a selling point. And he wouldn't do it. And I believe he died in 1985, and it's just a bit of a coincidence that that's when they started putting them in. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. So this is the adjustable truss rod, which I'll pass one around. You probably have seen these before. They're pretty common. It's just an aluminum U-channel with a rod going in the center of it. And when you turn it, the entire assembly bends. I kind of like them. As far as, I haven't had too many issues with them from a service standpoint. Once in a while, they'll lock up a little bit. This, I'm more or less just showing the truss rod, but as a secondary thing, when I reset necks, I put a wedge under the fingerboard to make up for the fall away or the drop off from kicking the neck back. So looks like what I'm doing here is just getting ready to insert a wedge. And on those truss rods, you can fit that wedge intact underneath. You can slide it under, and if you can't, just put a little saw or something under there and create a space under the truss rod. If anything, there might be some glue in there that would prevent that wedge from sliding in.
Were they one ways?
That's a one-way action. Yeah, one way. Not a big deal, but if you see this little hole here, they would put in production, they would put a threaded bushing in there just to hold the neck while they were painting it. That's what that is. Nowadays, they leave that in, and I think for a while they were taking them out. I don't know, maybe saving money. I don't know.
Hey, Matt, could you back that up?
Of course.
And let me get those serial numbers down.
Yeah, sure.
One more slide.
You want the from the square tube?
Got the serial numbers of when they started.
Sure,
the
yeah.
adjustable truss rod.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, let me get you forward up there.
You can also find that information in the thick boat lawnmower.
Yeah, there's a few different sources. I think it's coming up. There you go. And these serial numbers that you see here, these are just production notes, and I wouldn't take that as the gospel that is the actual number, but that's why I put circa. It's in that range. I don't think they were a lot of these changes to the guitars were dealt transitionally. They weren't like one day, everybody, this is what we're doing. Sometimes they were like, okay, the dreads are going to start with the adjustable truss rod. And then maybe a few weeks later, they might do the triple O's. So it's just around there. Okay, so One of the things about putting in that rod, that big hunk of metal under there, is they needed to make room for it. So now you can see what they've done here is they've kind of come in and hollowed out all this area. In fact, they've cut through the popsicle brace. That has been severed. Let me get a little better shot here. There you go. So this is a 1994 model. The heel block is really just that thin sort of rectangular block. There's nothing else. It looks pretty traditional, like what you're used to seeing a heel block look like. In case you didn't know, those two holes there are just production holes to mate up the soundboard to the heel block. It just makes the workers can put pins in there and line everything up very quickly, and it won't slide around. That's that. Here's that same guitar looking inside, and again, now you can see that's the popsicle brace right there. As you can just see, it's just cut, just severed. There's the transverse, or the number 1 brace. A lot of people think that Martin stopped using hide glue back in 65, 64 when they moved to the new factory, but as you can see here, that top was put on with hide glue. And what Milt Hess from the repair department had told me that they used hide glue to glue the tops and backs right up into the 90s. And so that's kind of your proof right there, because they would typically use white glue for most of their production.
Cutting through that brace, have you seen if that's created a structural issue there?
Well, we'll probably get into that in a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now they went, and this is 2003. What we just looked at before was 94. So now they've actually changed a little bit, and they've added an extension to the heel block. And I think this might have been their way of trying to add a little more structure to the extension area, but still severing, cutting the popsicle brace. Let's see here. So here is Martin dovetail, and here is that block. And you're welcome to take a look at that. On this, so now we're in 2003, and it's kind of faint, but you can see really is white glue. So now at this point they've discontinued that, and I never saw the room where they were gluing the tops and backs with hide glue on their regular production models, but I was told it was a really warm room. They kept it very warm somewhere in the plant. Just never bothered going there. Here's another shot of that block from the side. I think it helped with the structure. It helped a little bit, but maybe still not enough. It's all one piece, even though it kind of looks like it might be glued or something like that with the way the saw cuts are. Okay. Take a peek before you steam. So, with these adjustable truss rods, these aluminum U-channels that are going through, if you look through the sound hole and you see that truss rod nut that's actually coming out and under the transverse brace, you've got to remove that nut before you try steaming the neck out. So you just take a look in the sound hole. If you see that nut, very visible, it should be recessed in. But on the early, in 85 and for several years after, they were using a very long truss rod nut. And there's just another shot of it to kind of show you in relation to the heel block. Okay, so now here you can see where the problem is. Right here is the nut, and obviously when this is down attached, that nut is underneath this area, this rosette area. And if you try steaming the neck out and rising it up, this nut is going to blow out that whole section. So you want to make sure you pull that nut out before. And it was 3 or 4 years where they were using this elongated nut or having the U-channel stick out longer. It's not on all of them, but definitely is on that one. This is just another shot of that elongated nut versus that truss rod that was going around here. You can see those are much shorter.
How do you take the nut off?
Just spin it off. It's a 5 millimeter, and it's just a nut on a threaded rod. So just put a wrench in there and spin it out, pull it right out through that transverse brace hole.
When did that approximately end?
You know, I don't know. It's one of those things where I never really recorded.
Around 2008.
I'm sorry, what are we talking?
2008, they went to the two-way.
Oh, I thought you were talking about when they stopped using the long,
Yeah.
the elongated nut. Okay, the elongated nut. Yeah, that was just very early in production. They changed, but yeah, what John's talking about is a completely different configuration of a truss rod.
Pat, what was the point of the gap? I guess I didn't pick up on between the fretboard bottom and the truss rod. Is that because of the making up the space at the top so you get your wrench in, or?
Yeah.
A couple times where you have a piece of material showing there's a gap underneath.
Yeah, I don't know. In production, sometimes those truss rod, the channel doesn't sit all the way down. You're talking about contacting the fingerboard?
Yeah, you have a spacer there on purpose showing that.
Yeah, well, that's just the wedge that I put in there to make up for the change of the neck angle. When I set the neck back in, I don't want to have this severe drop off. So when you look at it when it's installed from the extension, it sort of like rises up a bit, you know, it angles upwards.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah, okay, let me just back up. Correcting a truss rod, oh, that's fine. Correcting a raised truss rod. This is something that occurs on those U channels. It's about the only real problem that I've come up with or had to deal with. So you can see what's going on here. Well, first off, you can see that nice gap that's under there where you can slide your wedge right under there, no problem. Okay, so what's happened here is that, you know, at some point maybe somebody loosened the tension on the rod, on the nut, and then that allowed this metal rod that's right here, which already kind of wants to lift on some models, to lift up. And I mean, it's probably not terrible, but the issue is if you don't fix that, it's not going to align like this. It may end up away and you can't get a wrench in there, or you're going to have to create a larger hole. So the remedy, take all that off, and then just create a little tapered wedge of whatever you have laying around the shop, and just bang it into that spot and basically you're basically just going to drive that bolt back down into place, and put a little adhesive in there like that, and just trim it with X-Acto blade, and it's done. It's back, it's flush. So now when you drop that neck back in, everything's going to line up.
You want it down on the fretboard.
I just want it back so that the, let me just back up here. If you look at that little, that nut right there, I want that nut to be back down so that the bottom is flush with the U channel. So we got, you know, kind of good even pressure all around that U channel.
Right.
Because there's a lot of force when you start cranking those.
Is the actual threaded rod, is that steel encased in an aluminum?
Yeah, it is. I don't know if you had a chance to see it when it went around, but in the center of that aluminum rod, there's a little spacer that sits under the steel bar. And the idea is that as you're tightening it, that spacer causes the U channel to actually bend.
Is that stuff on the top of the U-channel there, is that just glue or something that's on top of it?
Okay, that's tape. That's just tape, yeah.
And to keep it from rattling, or just to keep it in, or?
It's, yeah, they just, yeah, you can see a little bit of it right there where I'm starting to pull it off. It goes down the entire width.
Yeah.
And they really don't rattle that much. I haven't had much. Have you had any issues, John, with yours rattling? That one?
Milt told me they put the tape in there because they found that if they got glue in the channel, the rod didn't work.
That makes sense, yeah. Yeah, because they do glue them in.
Yeah, once in a while you get one, and usually that you find out that the truss rod, the barrel nut's loose.
Yes.
You know, once,
Yeah.
once they're snug, they're pretty rattle-free.
Exactly. While I have this photo up too, what we could talk about briefly is that, I wonder if this, oh, I think this is one that actually did get it. Not sure. Sometimes people will over tighten the rod and they'll actually break the rod, the threaded rod on these. Snap it right off. But so what you can do is actually you can go back and very carefully saw a little bit here. Just saw it, kind of saw underneath. Any way you want to get a piece of that off to expose more of the rod, then you can put your nut on and your washer and you're more or less back in business. But those truss rods are glued in, so the only way to get them off is to pull the fingerboard, which you don't want to do if you can avoid it. So you try and salvage the rod.
And I don't know about you, when I take them out, do you pull the nut off and put a little Vaseline on it?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's just kind of a, and sometimes I've had to go in and make well, I have some little washers that if I have a truss, if one of these is really tight, sometimes I found adding a spacer washer seems to help. All right, what do we got into? All right, so this one's wild. There was a collaboration between Thomas Humphrey and Martin on his classical guitars. I guess they, felt he could, Martin could make more of them than he could, and so there was a coming together. And I've only seen one of these, and they're really kind of a bizarre tapered soundboard, which you can't see it from this shot, but when you look at the actual fingerboard extension and how it tapers downward, then it might give you an idea that the actual soundboard is kicked like that.
Don't they call that an elevated soundboard?
I think so, yeah. I don't like classical guitars, so I just don't deal with them at all. Those people that play those guitars hear things that I don't hear. So I'm like, well, I don't hear it, so how can I help you? So I leave them alone. So there you go. Here's kind of a good shot that shows you, boy, it's kind of wild, that taper on the fingerboard extension going downward.
It's almost like they built the top on the back.
Yeah, I don't know. I never followed up on it. I saw one at the Martin factory, and then one came into the shop, and that's enough for me. Yeah.
Did they have a Spanish heel or
No, no. But do you mean the neck attachment?
yeah?
I'll show you. So if you do have to remove one of these for whatever reason, they are removable. Fortunately, they're bolt-ons
Oh,
right there. And the fingerboard extension is glued on, but they have hollowed out quite a bit of it. So in terms of removing the fingerboard extension somewhat intact, you might be able to do it without tearing up the board. Especially if you can read the grain runout. Are you guys familiar with grain runout and how important it is? You want me to explain it, or are you good?
Explain it.
Okay, all right. Grain runout is something that when you are removing a component on a soundboard, it's really important that you read the grain before you go in and decide which way you're going to bring the spatula in. You're going to Are you going to come in this way here with the spatula, or are you going to attack it from this way? If you attack it from the wrong way and it's got some severe grain runout, then your spatula is just going to dive right into the spruce and tear it up. So with grain runout, maybe I can explain it a little bit. Rather than do a whole guitar, I'll just do a guitar blank. There's the center seam. And if you're here and this is somewhat elevated and you're looking at it and the light is behind you, you may see this area here is a little darker than this area. Hopefully you can see that. Well, that would be grain runout. And if we were to take this piece of spruce and flip it, now what you're going to see is that the grain runout, it goes to the other side. And it's just a matter of which way the light is catching the grain runout and creating a shadow. So if I'm looking at a top and I see grain runout like this, and let's say, for example, here's my fingerboard extension. I'm looking at the piece. I see the two distinct contrasting halves. What I look at is which way am I going in? Am I going to come in on this side, or am I going to come in on this side with my first plunge under the fingerboard extension? And the way that I remember it is go into the light. Go into the light, young fella. So here's the light side. So you go in this way. If you try going in this way, what you're going to hit is all that grain runout that's creating that shadow, and it's going to drive right into the spruce. So it's really important. Again, with the bridge, which, you know, I'm sure you guys are pulling bridges. Same thing. Here's my big bridge. Once again, with the bridge, I have a couple choices here, which is I can go this way into the light, or I can go this way, which would be into the light if I was standing here with the light source behind me. Kind of really important. And so getting back to that, if I was to take that off, I would spend a lot of time deciding how am I going to attack it? What side am I going to come in on? Because you really can't heat that, you know, to remove the extension. It's just too big. So you got to heat your knife a little bit, warm it. One of the ways that I warm a knife, if I want a spatula, is I'll just take the spatula and I'll go up to my buffing wheel, and I'll put it on the buffing wheel and create a little bit of warmth, and then plunge it in, see what happens.
I had the pleasure of resetting one of those necks. And how I did it
Yep.
is I drilled a hole and KY jelly and vinegar. And I just filled the hole and left it sit overnight. And I'd rather be lucky than good.
Sure.
Then I steamed the neck off, and then it actually left me come in underneath, and it actually came out reasonably clean.
I just want to back up to that Humphrey neck.
Do you mind if I ask just a real quick question?
You just let him fly.
I've removed like 4 bridges or whatever, and the toughest one I ever had to remove was one I glued on with fish glue. It seemed like I really had to get a lot of heat to get that fish glue to release. Is that usual for fish glue?
I think I've only had one guitar that I knew, or a couple that had fish glue, and for me, removing guitar bridges that have fish glue, it's usually because the bridge joint has failed. So I'm already, you know, ahead of the game. So I don't know the problem that, are you using a Watlow heat blanket? How are you heating it?
Yeah, well, typically what I'll do is I have a digital controller, and
Yep.
the 250 seems to do it for, you know, vinyl glues and everything else. I couldn't get it to budge. I had to take it up to, you know, higher than that.
Was your finish rippling at all around? Were you getting any rippling of the finish from the heat?
No, well, it eventually charred the.
It did. So was that really?
It charred the bridge.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't use fish glue. I ordered it once from Stu Mac. And I tried it for a little bit. I said, "Oh, this is kind of cool," but then it kind of gelled up on me. I'm just so used to hide glue that's what I use. I just mix it every morning.
Oh, I'm a fish glue.
I know you're.
Yeah, John loves
guy.
fish glue.
And,
What do you think, John?
Well, I stopped using it on the bridge for that reason, and the way that I pull fish glues, and in fact I have it on a YouTube, you can pop a bridge off with a chisel.
Okay.
But now it's not like bang.
Yeah, I know.
You just keep going around,
Yeah,
tippy tap,
okay.
tippy tap, and the glue will eventually fracture.
Because it's more crystalline.
And
Yeah.
then once it lifts, go microwave some water for 3 minutes,
Yeah, okay.
squirt that in underneath there, and it'll come off rather easily. Because
Okay.
heat is just a nightmare for it.
Just talking about bridges really quick and adhesives. Because I work with Collings, I would just warn you guys, if you are going to work on a Collings guitar, is that they use an adhesive called Imperial, which is the release point is 400 degrees. So if you have to remove a bridge on a Collings from 1999 to the present, probably don't do it because it's going to tear up. What I do is I route the bridge off, and I'll show you those steps. Pre-99, they used just a regular, like a tight bond, and you can heat them and pull them. But just a little FYI. Okay, so that's all that.
One thing that I read recently that was just helpful for me to remember Torn Out was just almost like, I think it's a Star Wars reference, just beware the dark dark side.
Beware the dark side. That's a good one. Like me, I'm positive. I'm going to go with the light. You know.
I could never remember.
Yeah,
When I saw that, I was like, oh.
You just need that saying is you see the dark side. When you see if you're looking at a soundboard and there's dark on that side, just do not put a spatula into it. Even if that's where you want to do it, try working the other side and then come around. Okay, so yeah, we were talking a little bit about my concerns on extension cracks, and what I have found is that people reset necks, they pull necks off, they put necks back on, but they don't look to see if there's a crack on the extension. I'm talking in the spruce, in the soundboard. And a lot of times you don't see that crack, but it's there. So every time I pull a neck, I have a little bottle of naphtha, and I just run it right along the area where it's, because typically it will crack right on the line where the finish was scored for removal. Just using a pipette, this crack is kind of a little more apparent now with that naphtha in there. And so then I'll have a couple mirrors down in there, and I'll immediately, as soon as I've laid that naphtha in, I'll look down there and I'll pretty much always see one side or the other, often both, I'll see a wet spot. And it's one of those things, when you take a neck off, you think, oh man, that thing came off perfect. I'm just gonna, put the heel back on and glue it in. But what's gonna happen is if you don't deal with that, then that crack is gonna continue. The neck's gonna pull forward, and then it's gonna be back on your bench, and it's gonna be a mess.
Can you back up a picture?
Absolutely.
So the naphtha would steal the crack, but it couldn't.
Yeah, and so the naphtha it'll light up it'll go, and it'll evaporate off in a minute or so. You don't use water or something like that that's going to raise the grain. There's other products that you could use in New England. Naphthas are pretty available, so that's what I use.
My hardware guy says they can't order you.
Oh, really? So I guess I better
Just a couple of weeks
I better stock up.
Fluid's the same thing, as well as some of the, believe it or not.
Yeah. So and so I put it in those little bottles, so I'm just kind of using it sparingly. And so there it is. So okay, here's another shot of a soundboard, which I can tell you that it has cracks on either side, even though they maybe aren't completely apparent, and so we got to deal with them. Okay, now we're getting into more visible ones. When you see all that crinkling all around the rosette, that's just like a telltale. So when the guitars come in, an owner comes in with a guitar, and they're like, well, I need a setup, or my action's kind of high. I'm always looking every single time in this area, and I'm looking for traces of movement, and you can see all that. Of course, you can see that crack right there. You can see that crack there. The distortion of the rosette, it's everywhere. And so when they do come into the shop right away, even if it's not that apparent, but if I believe that there is an extension crack while they're there in the initial meeting, I put a couple mirrors inside there. I take a little naphtha, put a light inside the guitar, and I just say to the owners, just look into the mirrors. And then I drop that naphtha in, and they're like, whoa. So that sells the job right away, because you got to deal with that.
You even see the separation of the sound hole.
Yes. Yeah, and I have all different variations, or I have it where it's very subtle, or I have it where the neck is just pulled in and just really ripped everything bad. Let me back up here.
Are the cracks just from normal wear and tear, or was it because the neck was removed for a reset?
Okay, I guess I'll get into it a little bit. My thought on it is that possibly I tend to see the crack lines right along where the finish is, for the most part. Let me back up. I tend to see the extensions. Let me see if I can get rid of that. That's going to be annoying. Hold on. I think we got to open.
Icon at the bottom.
Hold on, let me get. Give me a second.
You'll fall in.
You think it will? Okay. There it goes. that'll pop back up. What I tend to see is the cracks always occurring right along the fingerboard itself. So that kind of leads me to believe that maybe it could have been a scoring issue.
I think too, because of the shrinkage differential between the spruce
Mm-hmm.
and the ebony.
Yep.
Because it's definitely more pronounced on ebony guitars
Yep.
than on rosewood.
Yeah, yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah,
So
I'll definitely give you that.
I
Yeah.
tend to think from an engineering
Pulls,
standpoint,
pulls.
that's the part.
Yeah, yeah, I'll go with that.
And people who don't take care of their guitars and.
A lot of it is dryness. It's just, there's a sort of an Achilles heel. It's kind of a weak thing that is waiting to happen. And when you tear up your guitar, when you dry it out, well, that might be a spot where it's going to go. So here's one here that's just outside of the extension. This is common too. What you'll see, you may not see the crack, but what you'll see is this pinching right here. And that's a real good indicator that something's moving and not in a good way. Another one where it's going right into the rosette sound hole area. Okay, this looks like, well, probably a 40, 42, 45. And there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of movement going on here. And this one here, I can tell that crack line is right on that black purfling.
You can see the miter there.
Yeah, well, the miter's, there's a lot of stuff moving there, but that crack line's coming right down, and you can follow it right there, right there.
How old might that guitar be?
This one, how old is this? Probably 90s, not that old.
Probably drying, take the date away, right? Doesn't matter about the date, it's not dry out.
Yeah, I can't remember if I replaced the top on this one, if there was a lot of other issues going on, but I seem to remember replacing a 45 not too long ago, a couple of years ago. This might have been it. This one, that just, pay no attention to that one. That's just a reminder. Okay, so when you have a fingerboard extension that has cracked on either side and the neck is really pulling into the body, you've got those big splits coming into the rosette, you want to glue it, but first what you want to do is try and realign everything to get that heel block and that extension back into place. So this is a tool that I made. I call it a spreader. I think they had one at the Martin factory that, I don't know if it was like this, but this was my version. That's just EMT, electrical metallic tubing there, threaded rod, nut, and then just a couple of wooden blocks. You can take all of this and put it into the guitar disassembled. In fact, you have to get it to fit in there. And then you assemble it in the guitar. And when it's assembled, it kind of looks like that.
So you're pushing on the block?
Yes. So I'm going to put force on opposing forces on the blocks. And here it is here. Now, actually, this is a Taylor, but it's the same deal. So you can see at this point now, the spreader is in there, and I've got that nut, which is set so that I can work on it and tighten it through the sound hole.
Do you use any heat or steam when you're doing
Yes, I do. So what I do, I was looking for a photo, but I couldn't find one in my computer that depicts that. But basically, I have this on a bench with an infrared lamp right above. The lamp is maybe 1.5 feet away. Sometimes I'll bring it a little closer, it depends. And by using that heat, what it does is it softens the rosette, and it allows that rosette to kind of come back into a good alignment. Because that rosette, once it's kind of kinked, it's resistive to coming back. But the heat brings everything back. And on these extension cracks, I use epoxy. If it was an older guitar, which I don't know, that terminology changes for me, but I think to me older, I guess, would be 50s. I don't know. I have kind of a sliding scale on what I think is older, and also it kind of depends on the condition of the guitar.
What epoxy do you use?
I use West Marine Systems.
I use, I have a gun shop. I get gun stock epoxy because it can take a shot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, West Systems is sold by West Marine, so it's a marine epoxy, and it's mixed 5-to-1. And there's a few reasons why I use epoxy, and the main reason is because I do not want the guitar coming back into my shop. And these extension cracks, sometimes somebody will have already gone in and tried to glue it. They might have squished some glue underneath the sound hole or put some, kind of crazy little cleats or something in there, and it failed. And so what I have found is that the epoxy works the best. When I am getting ready to apply the epoxy, I put pinstriping tape on either side, pretty tight to the crack line. That's 3M fine line tape. I think StuMax started selling it, but I've been using it for years. It's really good because once you put it down, the adhesive will not go underneath it. It really is, it's a good tack. Okay. And it doesn't seem to hurt lacquer.
What's it called? It's
3M.
3M fine line tape.
Yeah.
And it's also transparent.
Yeah, it is.
You can see someone through it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you get the epoxy to go in?
Okay. Yeah, great. So that's actually the easy part. So I mix up about 1.5 grams of epoxy. I've got really very delicate scale so that I can mix just small amounts. And so I usually mix about 1.5 grams, like 1.25 grams resin to 0.25 kicker hardener. I take that and I have it in a little 1-ounce cup. And I bring that over to my glue pot, which is about 150 degrees. I just hold the cup into the pot and then I mix it, I stir it. If you do that in the pot, first off, the viscosity will turn to water. And secondly, you won't get any air bubbles because it's water. If you try mixing that cold, you'll get air bubbles, and I don't even think you're getting as good of a mix. So you have to be careful. You can't leave it in there too long because it will kick off. But I'm talking 30 seconds of mixing. And then I draw it up with a pipette, and I just lay it right down in that spot. And I leave it there for, well, if I'm doing a crack on another area, no matter what, I'll leave it a minimum of 1 hour. And you go back after an hour and you look inside and you will see a very thin, like brown line. It's great because it doesn't do like what super glue would do, which is kind of make a big mess, a big wet mess under there, stain the underside. It's very tight and concise.
The heat from your infrared lamp also makes it wick in.
Sure, yeah, that will help too. So that's kind of how that's my take, is I just feel that epoxy is the best adhesive. Now, if I've got an older guitar, like I said, if it's 50s, 40s, I mean, I really won't use epoxy. I just kind of seems like not the right adhesive to use unless I really have to.
And no clamping?
No clamping is needed, no, because everything has been realigned with the spreader. It's right where I want it to be. I mean, if for some reason, before I put the tape down, I have the spreader in place. If I feel a fracture, then I will clamp. I'll put a caul there and clamp it. But I think it looks like on this occasion I didn't need that.
So on an older guitar then, what's your adhesive of choice?
Well, it would probably be high glue. It would be high glue and then probably some cleats underneath. Things that I felt would be removable. If somebody down the road would be like, oh man, I don't like what he did. Well, at least you can pull it all apart and do it your way.
If it was a crack in a different area?
Okay, well, for me, cracks in general, I use epoxy on anything that, one of the big things, just talking about guitar repair, is you might run into center seam cracks. Get a crack down the center seam. And then, first off, maybe someone has brought it somewhere and they tried to glue it and it's open. You put some naphtha in there and it runs right down. Well, I will use epoxy again. And the reason being is because if you've got two pieces of wood that have been glued and that glue joint failed, well, there's adhesive on those surfaces. And if you just add more tight bond or whatever, it's not going to, you're just ripping off the owner. So I found that epoxy works great for an old failed glue joint. Yeah, it does a couple things. What I'll do is I'll put a jack, those StuMax scissor jacks? I'll get in there and I'll jack it up, fine line tape. I'll put my adhesive that I've heated up right down that line. I'll let it sit for an hour. And then gradually the gravity will just draw that down in there. And what kind of happens is, here's the soundboard. And there's the crack line. As that epoxy kind of goes down what it does, it's not to scale, but, and this just references where that crack line was. What it does, it sort of kind of comes down a little bit and spreads out just slightly. It's a pretty clean line, but to me that is like almost like a cleat. It's almost like when you have horsehair plaster with lavs, and that plaster goes in and it kind of goes underneath and it keys. It's the same thing. But on a crack, once I've put the adhesive in, waited an hour, I release the jack, and then I will usually clamp on top, squish it all down, and let it sit overnight. Yeah?
Pat, where's the relationship of the neck block underneath the top in respect to the crack? Or the
Sure.
board end?
Okay. So purposely, let's just say here's the heel block. There's the soundboard. I have a little cutout, little recess that I made, I drilled, and there's a little washer in there. And so that part right there, that threaded rod, is up about as high as I think that I can get it. Now, I can't go all the way because I got a transverse brace that's going to be right there that's going to kind of be in the way. So it's at the top. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, it was really about the relationship of the fretboard width with the width of the block relationship and the crack. So the fretboard width, the block width is
In
what
relation to
relationship?
the heel block.
Oh, okay. Usually the heel block is in just a little bit. Usually the heel block is somewhere, seems to be in, a little bit here, if that's what you're asking. So the crack line's here.
Yep.
The heel block is within.
So isn't that a point where the fretboard is contacting that would naturally stress along that line?
Yeah, you could say that might be an idea, but what I've always found for the most part is it tends to follow the finish removal line.
There's two obvious failure points on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you may agree with this. The number one is absolutely that the finish transition
Yeah.
between the raw wood and the glue joint. Or if some bustard removed the neck previously, loosened the top, glued the neck in without re-gluing the top, then oftentimes you'll see those cracks follow the edge of the neck block.
Sure. Yeah. When you are removing a neck, what is really important is so you've removed the neck and you've got the spruce right here. What you always want to do is I like to go inside and lift right here to see if there's any separation from the top of the heel block to the spruce. You want to make, I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, John, but if that has come loose, that's a definite issue.
What I do is I use a razor blade from the outside.
Yeah.
And if the razor blade goes in, you got to re-glue.
You've got to deal with that, yeah, exactly.
And again, if you got tight bond, make sure that you remove the old tight bond because you're just wasting glue.
Yeah, and if it's high glue, then usually what I'll do right then and there is I'll just take some high glue, squish it in there, float it in there, and clamp the whole thing, and I'll be done with it.
Yep.
Hey Pat, this
Yeah.
repair here with the rosette and things like that,
Yeah.
can that only be done with the neck off? Or can you like loosen the tongue joint and do that repair?
You can. You can. On this one here, I'm pretty sure that those extension cracks are, and the way tailors tend to crack is they tend to crack a good bit outside of the extension lines. So yeah, you could do that without pulling the neck. But usually what I've found is that when I have to use the spreader bar, then the fingerboard has pulled in so much that the neck angle is really whacked. And when I put everything back together, I got to pull the neck anyways to correct the neck angle. It's not often that it goes back.
Was that a tailor? That wasn't a glued-on tailor. Was that a bolt-on neck yet?
Okay, this was the older, in '99, they came up with their new method with these 3 bolts, and it's basically, they call it new technology neck. This is the older, what they call the classic neck, where the fingerboard extension is glued on to the top, and then there's 2 bolts on the side.
I've never seen the crack happen because of a bolt-on
Sure.
fingerboard, but you don't work on Gibsons much.
I don't know.
Okay, now on Martin's, they totally glue the entire fingerboard extension. On Gibson's, it's rare that this happens on a Gibson unless it was a failed top over the neck block. But when Gibson glues their fingerboard extension, instead of gluing the whole extension, they just put one dollop of glue on there. So, in my theory, is if you have all that glue, that one little dollop of glue from the Gibson, that allows that to expand and contract a little bit. Where
Gives a
your
little more leeway. Yeah, yeah, could very well be. This is just kind of fun, just fun stuff. Couple of just wow.
My daddy works on wood. I can fix that
Yeah.
guitar.
Look at that. That's wild. I guess those are pieces of celluloid. I can't remember what that
Looks
is.
like it.
Celluloid.
I should have sent you the picture of that, the ice cream cone heel.
Yes.
Steve Kovacic got that guitar.
Yep.
Called me up because he knows I like him. He sent me a picture. There was 4 bridge plates on that guitar. And the
They-
top on that guitar was only like 60 thousandths thick. They made them pretty thin on the gut string day. So
Wow.
I said, thanks, but I'll pass.
Yeah.
My buddy calls me up and says, do you know where there's an old guitar? Call Steve. He got the guitar and he said, I'm sending it to you. I can't fix it.
Oh wow.
So I ended up restoring that guitar. To be honest with you, those old 217s are great guitars. So I ended up.
Yeah, I love those. Yeah. So this is another one with just all kinds of interest. This has got to be pre-war because I'm pretty sure that bridge plate's tucked. Doesn't that look like it's tucked?
Looks like it's stuck to me.
Yeah. So that's a pre-war top. That
You can see the tuck on the tone bar.
I think this came from the Martin factory. I think I was just down there just grabbing some tops from a stack and just going, wow, wow, wow. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Could you see what problem we were trying to solve there on the treble side? Those big cross bracers?
Maybe there was I don't know. I mean, usually when you see reinforcement like that, it's because of a pick guard that maybe went concave, that just kind of, but I don't know.
Because I used to use tortoise pick guards. What year was this one from?
Oh, well, this has got to be before, 1941 or before, but I don't know. I don't know. I saw it and I said, wow, that'd make a nice
That's
picture.
a neat one.
Yep. Okay, what are we into here? Okay, this is just quick, but so I don't know if you guys have ever come across when they used to saw off the extensions. That was wild. I think I have it in maybe Don Teeter's book. I'm not sure. I think it was Don. Yeah, I think Don Teeter. I think in his book he talks about just taking a saw, cutting off the 14th fret, sawing through the extension, pulling the extension off. Then, did he have like a knife and then he put water in there and he put a butter knife in there and then he put a blowtorch on the
Great.
yeah. That's wild.
I had one where it was they steamed up from the back.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
went right through the purfling.
Oh,
of the
wow.
28,
Yeah.
And then they made a little checker to go back in.
Wow, man. So yeah, I mean, I still see those the guitars will come in with the sawed-off extensions that need another neck reset. So when a guitar comes in, first, one of the main things I'm doing is I'm always looking around the area around the extension to see what kind of trouble I'm going to get into. And you can usually tell, if you look carefully, you can see that saw line that's been repaired.
Oh, yeah.
So getting into it, that thing's going to come off as soon as you heat the extension, and you're going to have to deal with it. This is just a little quick thing. So if you should pull the neck off and you see that little dowel right there, then you know it probably was reset at the Martin factory. Because what Martin used to do is before the idea of pulling the fret over the body and injecting steam down into the fret slot, what Martin would do is they would pull the heel cap off. They would take the heel cap right off and they would drill a hole at an angle down through there into the tenon and back out that way and injects, kind of like a enema kind of thing.
Yeah. I've seen that one. I kind of figured that's what it was.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I see them every now and then. It's like, okay, I guess I know where this guitar was. And I guess my chisel wasn't that sharp that day. It looks a little,
You should have said it came into the shop this way.
no, as soon as I pull a neck off a guitar, immediately after steaming it, I bring it right over to a table and clean as much of the adhesive as I can off. And it looks like the chisel wasn't that sharp, but I just went with it anyways. Okay, yeah, just a little field trip. See what they do down there. That is not supposed to be there, so we'll move on. Okay, this is the neck pulling station at the Martin repair shop. I love these old benches. These are, going back to North Street. There's just a few of them left. There's not many. And They're kind of cool. But
They are.
this is where they pull the necks and the bridges. Here's another view of the same thing. You can see the infrared lamp right here on a swivel. Here's the drill that they use to create the drill through the fret slot. They use a massive drill bit. I don't know what size that is, but it's massive.
I use about 1/8 of an inch. I use a 3/32.
I use one, yeah, mine is, I don't even know, it's always in a chuck drill. It's smaller than the actual width of the fret slot.
Yeah, 3/32 is 94. I get the next one down, so it's just underneath.
It's just, yeah, it's just like 70 something, yeah. And
So
what I do,
It doesn't create a little half moon on the.
No, it doesn't show.
no, and what I do when I do drill down into that fret slot is I actually rock it, the drill bit slightly while it's spinning, back and forth along the slot line, and that makes it just big enough for my needle to go in there, because I just don't want to have to touch it up. What Martin does, because this is so big, after when they, to cover the hole, they'll take a piece of ebony and they'll put it into a pencil sharpener, and a little glue, bang it in, and then trim it flush.
Do you drill 1 or 2 holes?
I drill 2 holes on any guitar that does not have an adjustable truss rod. The reason being is I want the steam to come out in the area where I want it to come out. I don't want it to come out down the end of the fingerboard or out a fret end. Sometimes steam has a way of moving in different areas, so I create a relief valve. This is my idea.
Well, John, Arnold.
Yeah.
Because as you know, on older ones especially, you get the blushing.
Yes.
John Arnold told me this trick, and I've not had trouble with blushing trick since. I drilled 2 on all.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, as my water's getting hot, I have a double boiler.
Yep.
Or not a double boiler, pressure cooker.
Pressure cooker.
So I have it off, and when the water, just before the water gets hot enough to boil, I'll take a pipette, and I literally fill the pocket with hot water.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so then I throw my top on, wait for my steam to start
Yeah.
spitting. I usually give about a minute on one side, pick it up and just let it wait a minute or 2,
Yep.
and then basically a minute on the other side, and I'm bouncing back and forth.
Yep.
And I found that the blushing issue is no longer.
You
an
don't really
issue.
get steam rushing out along the
Nope,
cheeks?
And then after about 5 minutes, I just start rocking the neck, and then you start seeing where the water's coming. And I mean, I want to thank John Arnold
That's
for
good,
that,
yeah.
because that is a big problem on the older.
Yeah, it is. If the guitar has an adjustable truss rod, I just drill 1 hole because the steam's going to come out through the sound hole, where the truss rod hole is. So that's basically it. Let's see, what do we got here? Okay, so there's this is what they use. They've been using this Bertha, for years. They'll usually stack up 4 or 5 necks to be pulled, so once this thing gets cooking and starts steaming, they'll just go one to the next.
I remember Gary Lindenmoyer.
I don't think I know that name.
Okay, when I got to become just before I became a repair center, they invited me in for 2 weeks of training.
Yeah.
You know Dave Musselwhite?
Sure.
You know Milt Hess?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I'm over there learning how to steam out necks. And Linda Moyer says, excuse me, he said, I gotta go to the bathroom. He said, I'll be back in a few minutes. So I'm standing here holding the needle on the neck. Next thing you know, I hear this crash. Did you ever hear a guitar hit the ground?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
The whole gang went behind me and literally threw a guitar that came in from you. And they put me on a 24 donut fine for the rest of my 2 weeks staying out there. And so it was make fun of the new boy.
Sure.
But yeah, they had a sense of humor, but they were slick at pulling necks.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what they use. I'll just talk about different methods of creating steam. You use something like this, John, a pressure cooker?
I took a $5 yard sale pressure cooker. Do not drill through that TCP valve. And I just went to Harbor Freight, got a bolt-on air.
Sure.
And I just use an air hose, and I do use a Stumac needle.
Yeah.
But I found from the veterinarian, it's a number 5 horse needle.
Oh, okay.
So she keeps me
She hooks you up? Oh, that's good, yeah. This is one way to do it. The only thing I don't like about this, or in my opinion, is I can't control it once it gets rolling. So I just like the espresso machine, I found that by using the espresso machine, I can throttle the steam control to just what I want in terms of the amount of steam. So this is what they use. It's big. Okay. To heat up the extension, they just use this infrared lamp, and those are phenolic plates that are over there, just kind of keeping the top from getting cooked.
If you don't have phenolic, cardboard and aluminum foil. work
Sure,
well.
that'll work, yeah. I use a Watlow heating blanket for my fingerboard extension. It's like a 2x5. I like it better.
I use a three
What
by
are those
five.
two little blocks sitting?
Okay, yeah, those are phenolic blocks, and those are on top of the inlay, the dot inlays,
Oh.
just so they don't get cooked.
Got it.
And then, of course, you can see they've, over the extension, past the extension, they just put one of their little spring steel spatulas over there. So they're just trying to, isolate the heat. Obviously, it needs a neck reset. You can see that bridge in that
it'll
saddle.
Use those little hand irons that I think Stumac sells. It's got the little,
I use that.
For what?
for heating the extension.
No, I use a heating blanket, a silicone heating blanket. Yeah,
That's what I use.
Yeah.
They work pretty good.
yeah, into a rheostat. Here's just one more shot of it, Jeff. You kind of see that the little blocks there.
Excuse me.
Yes.
That phenolic
Yes.
stuff is a heat shield.
Well, they're using it as it's just a thermoset plastic. It's, yeah, it's just phenolic. It's, I get
It's
it.
yeah, linen and phenolic resin.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. You can mill it, and I've made a lot of different jigs and calls out of it. It's really, really neat stuff. I think I've
Same thing with Micarta, right? I mean,
kind of, yeah, I think it's similar to micarta. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if this has this probably has a higher temperature resistance. I'm not sure. I would imagine. But I have a lot of jigs made out of this phenolic stuff. It's great. This is their neck fitting station in the repair department. So they just basically, it's kind of wild over there at the repair department where everything is individualized. So you have one person that pulls necks and might do structural repair. You have one person that just fits necks. You have another person that just does fretting. One person that does touch-up. So when the guitar goes into that factory in that repair department, it's probably going to see 7 or 8 different benches, 7 or 8 different people, which is kind of wild because it's like, how do you, there could be issues with the guitar and that you'd like to explain to the next person in line. Whereas if you're working on the guitar from when you're opening the case to when you're closing the case, it's a lot better because you're like, okay, I remember this was happening on the guitar. So, yeah.
At the same time, that guy who's fitting a neck is probably seeing everything that could possibly go wrong.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And maybe that information isn't getting sent downstream to the next person. At the Taylor factory, they have a different style where there's about 5 or 6 different repair techs, and each one of them opens the case, does all of the work, and closes the case. That doesn't go between benches. This is just neck glue up.
oh, that's pretty bad. Yeah.
One of the things that I would talk about, if you guys don't already do it, which I think is kind of important, is in your calls when you're gluing a dovetail, that I think that the caul should always extend at least a couple of frets past the neck body joint. It's real important. I've seen some guys that use cauls that just go to there, and I think that if you have a longer caul, it's a much smoother, straight transition across there.
You avoid that hump.
You avoid that hump, especially in doing a neck reset. Maybe with the first build, it's not an issue.
And make sure your caul is radius.
Make sure it's radius. This is 16 inches. So what they have is this little caul that goes underneath the guitar. It's rubber on top, felt on the bottom. When they glue the necks in repair department, they only leave them in, I think it's 2 hours. Not very long at all. And their concern is that that rubber is going to burn the lacquer. If it's an older guitar, it's not going to burn it. And if it was new production, it might.
This is in contact with the back.
Let me back it up here.
If I use
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. It's very subtle right there. You see the felts on the bottom of the clamp, and there's just a little bit of that black rubber coming up on the back heel
I think
block.
when I was out there, they were pulling the neck off at about an hour because tight bond grabs in 45 minutes. So they were pulling.
I was in and out. Yeah, I can't remember because I'd asked them, and I've asked them a few times, but I stopped asking them because I leave mine in for 2 days. I glue all mine with high glue.
Okay.
And I leave mine in clamps for 2 days, and it's just my thing. I leave when I glue a bridge on, I leave it on for 2 days. I don't know. I'm not in a huge rush.
Now on torrified, you haven't worked on any torrified Martins yet, have you?
No.
Okay, I found with the torrified process because it changes the wood.
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't pull moisture into the wood like raw wood
Mm-hmm.
does. So they're at least minimum 24 hours.
Yeah.
But like you, I generally do it on a Friday and take it off Monday.
Yeah, I'm in no rush to pull it out of clamps.
No.
And the same with I learned that by working on cedar top guitars. I found that the bridges tend to stay down better if you leave them glued in longer. So if you're not in a rush, leave them glued in.
To the pulling, there's Stumac has this thing that clamps on.
Yes.
Pushes up under the heel. Do you guys use that?
I do, actually, yeah. I like it. Because what it does is it puts the force right on that heel cap. I've modified mine because theirs just have these little feet that kind of go right here. I have these longer plates that go on either side that spread the force out. I don't want to dimple the top at all. I do use that. I kind of like it.
If you're going to be pushing something onto the top of the guitar,
Mm-hmm.
do you line it with like cork gasket?
Yeah, it's cork, and then my plates are cork, and then it's Teflon, and then the Stumac jig goes on top of that. Yeah, they're kind of like half. They're basically shaped like this, and they go right around both sides. And then on the heel cap, that Stumac thing, there's this little nylon. I don't know.
Toggle.
Yeah, it's just a little knob. I don't let that contact the heel cap because I don't want to do an imprint. So what I do is I take heel cap material, a big square, put it under there, and then let that little knob contact the heel cap material.
Mine's a piece of belt.
Sure, whatever.
The sound hole clamp, the bottom of it is coming up under the
Onto the extension?
transverse brace.
Yes, I can show you the call that they use for. They have many different calls for many different brace configurations, but I'll show you the one that I do have in this. Okay, so here's the call for that, and here's what you're asking about, Jeff, right here. So they have many different configurations for,
So they're clearing the upper transverse and the top sickle.
Yeah, on this one here, yeah, it looks like it looks like the contact points
That's
are
for the neck block without
here.
the cantilever.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So they have. I mean, there's boxes of calls, fingerboard extension calls, depending on what they want. I was looking through my photos, and that was a pretty clear one. So I said, well, I'll put that one in. These look like just production necks because there's no pick guard and the bridges haven't been drilled out. So just a bunch of them. Just another shot. Another production guitar. Now that's kind of weird. Okay, now this is wild. I don't know, you guys ever seen this?
I got a Babbitt's shirt on.
You do, okay. All right, well, here we go. So, take a minute to check that out.
Oh, is that the adjustable one?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen it. Okay.
they're out there. So if you guys are in repair, you may come across one, and I'll just give you some tips about it. Was patented in, I think, 2007 by Jeff Babbitt's. It's massive. It's a massive system. Okay, so it looks pretty simple and delicate there. You just got a wrench, you put it into that back plate, and the neck just moves vertically up and down. This is what you're actually looking at when you pull the neck off. This is metal, some big aluminum or steel thing, I can't remember. So this guitar I worked on a while ago.
It's not glued in at all?
It's not glued in at all. Basically what's holding it in is that threaded bushing right there, and then you'll see the bolt. The bolt is not there right now, but the bolt comes out right there. It's coming, from the back in. But you can look at the cutout. I mean, talk about removing some wood in an area where you kind of want to have some structure. Yeah, it's just like let's just crack that sucker open and hope it stays.
Well, the theory is that since the neck's adjustable, right? Any neck lift, it'll just turn the knob and
Yes,
pull it back.
yeah, exactly. So what's going on? So we have these two Teflon or nylon plates on either side, okay, on the heel block, and they made up against these two aluminum plates right there. And the aluminum plates have to be very tight up against those Teflon plates, or the neck will just wobble. And the way that is adjusted by, if you look at these holes right here, there's screws in there, and those screws contact those plates. So through the sound hole, you can get in there and you can tighten those. So if you've got a neck that's wobbling, you tighten them, and that's going to push everything together. So that's the adjustment to keep everything from moving around. Here's another shot. You can see how those plates are bent, and they're bent on purpose because those bolts are up against them, those little adjustment bolts. And here it is, kind of getting ready to slide down into the pocket. And another shot.
So there's no glue at all?
There's no glue, no. And I'll tell you, that neck is so heavy, that heel assembly.
Can you back that up one?
Yes, of course, yeah.
And the telltale signs, that big wide heel.
Yeah, that big fat heel. or the adjustment screw where it says Babbitt's on it too.
So that neck extension is sitting into the pocket?
Yes.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
I saw something very similar, I think a West German or East German guitar that came in, but without the refinement. It was just a bolt on and it set in like that.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't adjust nicely. Like, cheap as could be.
Sure.
I think
Similar like
Echo
that.
did it also.
Oh, they did, yeah.
Such a block
Mm-hmm.
and 4 screws.
Yep.
and
Pulling it in, yeah.
and,
Yeah.
And Steve Klein had it in the other direction.
Oh, we did? Okay.
With those aluminum prisoner and the neck sliding in.
Oh, I'm not sure if I've seen that one. Okay.
Steve Klein.
Yeah, I know him.
the
Yeah.
third one.
Actually, I have one of his bass, the Taylor bass. I really love that he built. That's amazing. So there's that back plate with that screw that's visible. So if you take the plate off, then you can access that bolt if you want to remove the bolt to get into it.
Where is that physically located?
This is the back of the guitar, right below the heel block.
Yeah. Plate, that plate sits on the outside?
Yeah, that plate sits on the outside. Yeah, that triangular plate.
See the indentation.
Yeah, you can see it's actually reversed right now, but those 3 screws are 1, 2, 3 right there. And that plate just covers the larger part of that head. So kind of the whole point of the thing is, this is the point that I wanted to get to you guys, is this is why I saw the guitar. Those adjustment bolts had loosened up and allowed that string tension to just rip and pull that sound, that sort of upper rosette area right into the body, because the neck was really just getting driven in. So once I realigned everything, I was able to go back, realign that, and touch it up. That was something.
Epoxy?
Yes, I probably did use epoxy. I colored epoxy.
You do drink beer, don't you?
Yes, I do.
I got to ask you, on using your epoxy,
Yeah.
like for an open crack, would you use a filler and then epoxy, or rely on the epoxy to fill?
Well, if it's an open crack, I would probably. Are we talking about like a spruce crack or something?
Yeah.
I would fill it with a piece of spruce.
Okay.
Yeah, usually when I do any type of fill with the spruce, I'll take the spruce and I will cut it a little bigger than what I want, and then I'll roll it to crush the wood fibers. I'll put it down into the spot where I want it, and then I'll blast it with steam so that it swells up,
Okay. Because I have a.
and then epoxy. But
'Cause-
where does the beer come in?
Oh, because these kind of John Wayne once said, "You got to do some thinking."
Oh,
Right?
oh.
Kind of on that, a little bit of that topic. If you're doing a crack with your epoxy, what's your cure time on the epoxy? Is it an hour?
24 hours. Yeah, but
Like the actual epoxy, like.
oh, it will in about an hour it will start to gel a little bit, but not a lot. You can still move it around. Yeah, so I'll wait. Yeah.
This system's got 5, so you pick whatever
I
speed
figured they
you
would
want.
have different speeds.
Yeah, there's different. Yeah, it's 206 is the stuff that I use. I think 20. There's a slow hardener and a fast hardener. I use the slow hardener. Yeah.
Do you ever hear of Hextall epoxy?
I have. Yeah.
Because Frank Ford swears by that, but it's a 2-week cure epoxy, but it really flows.
Yeah. So,
I want
yeah.
to talk to you about your epoxy.
Yeah,
right there.
I love it. Yeah.
I got a top I got to fix. I might experiment with him.
Yeah.
Move off the subject of the Babbitt pad. It sounded like the issue was driven by the fact that the adjustments
Exactly.
Keep the aluminum up against the Teflon.
Yep.
Had loosened up.
Yep.
And allowed the string tension to pull things back
Yep.
into the sound.
The failure of that was the lack of maintenance.
Are there other issues involved with Babbitt's neck that you?
Nope, it seems to me like if you keep those adjustment screws snug so that the aluminum plate and the Teflon plate are mating and there's no play, I don't see any other issues. Other than, I'm still really concerned about just cutting a big gaping hole under the fingerboard extension. That just, to me, seems kind of wild.
I have one that's about 6 years old.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any issues.
Well, that's
with it, but it does certainly creak and groan as you raise and lower it.
Sure, yeah, and then I've also, when I was playing around with it, I had to kind of work on those 4 screws to try and get it so that they weren't too tight so that I could get the movement. Yeah, I found, and then each one of them kind of has its own, you could kind of, as you're turning it, you can kind of feel what's grabbing and what isn't. Yeah, so.
Those screws are accessible through the sound hole?
Yeah, they are, yeah, right through the sound hole, yeah.
Is that an Allen screw?
Yeah, it was an Allen screw. I don't remember the size, but I probably just grabbed one and just went with it. Okay, so how are we doing on time? We good here? Yeah, we're good. All right, so the bridges. It's off topic, but important. Again, this is just kind of things I like to talk about. The bridge area, when Martin, in production, they started taping off the imprint of the bridge in around 1989. So they would, when it came out, when it was done out of polishing, the neck had been attached, they could go and put the bridge on, and they would basically just peel that tape off. It was kind of like Frisket, like that clear tape. So they could just peel it off, and they did not have to do any scribing around there. But the situation is that taped area, here you can see where the actual bridge goes, and there's the finish line. So there's quite a bit there. On this side, this photo doesn't show it that well, the next one will, but on this side, the actual outside of the bridge is right here. And we got to go all the way in to here till we hit some wood. This kind of shows a little better here. You can kind of.
So they wrap at the bottom of the bridge then, right?
No, they do not.
No, they just glued it on.
Just glued it on and hope for the best.
Yeah.
That is the thickness of
I had a bridge failure for that very reason. It was just touching the finish a little bit.
That was a worst case scenario one there, isn't it?
Well, that's kind of what I would typically see when a bridge was lifting. I'd pull the bridge off, and I would see that size bridge with that size.
They were easier to take off, though, weren't they?
They sure were. They sure were. I gotta say, but then
That process was automated.
the process is now automated, but it wasn't then. And okay, so before they started using this tape, what they would do is they would actually put the bridge down with a locator, and they would scribe around it, and they would remove all of the finish right to the edges of the bridge, which is good if you're skilled, if you're highly skilled with a chisel. And in production in large factories, that can be difficult. And if you go outside of that line, well, it's going to have to get kicked back into finishing for touch-up. And so, they come up with this method where it was more, okay, just peel the tape off, glue the bridge on, here we go. But of course, what I do is I will go in and scribe around it and remove that excess, just remove all that excess finish as close as I can get it.
So Pat, they were depending on a big gap glued area,
Well,
essentially?
yeah, I mean, certainly, the adhesive does not stick to finish. So they were relying on that smaller
Glue
amount.
joints are weak if they're thick.
What's that?
Glue joints are weak if they're thick.
Yeah, I like to see wood to wood pretty much the whole way. Collings and Taylor, they do not go. Their bridges do not. The finish. I'm sorry. The wood line does not go to the outside edge of the wood of the bridge. But they're very on a Collings. It's actually stepped, but it's so small. It's maybe a 16th, if that. So I think it's pretty acceptable. This is just, I think, a little too much. So if you do happen to pull a bridge off a Martin guitar and you see all that, just scribe around it and chisel it off, and you'll get a much, maybe you won't see that guitar back for the same reason. Okay, so, they realized, okay, this taped off area is maybe not the best. We need to come up with a different way to remove the finish under the bridge area. And so around 2007-ish, they come up with this, what we call the pocketed bridge. And this is a, oh yeah.
I'm always nervous about scribing around the bridge
Mm-hmm.
because of the possible damage to the integrity of the tile.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah, well,
practice?
Martin, in the repair department, they use a scribe. They use a Starrett scribe, and they go around it. And when you can usually see, when they put the bridge on, you can see the little chatter marks of the scribe as it went around and kind of hit all the grain lines. I use an X-Acto blade, and I'm just as careful as I can be to just, as you're drawing it across, you can just feel the bumps of the grain lines. And you don't want to go, it's a feel thing.
You're really
So-
just scribing the finish. You're not.
You're trying to, but you've got to cut down at least.
That's one of the problems with cedar is that so delaminates itself that if you cut those fibers.
Yeah.
You know, the people
Well,
think
especially
that
if you've
wood
got
that
if
will
you've
hold
got
it.
some crazy grain run out too. That's one side where the grain run out is on the back side. It's going to go like this and pull it right off. Yeah.
Pat, see if anybody else has that experience, but I pull my tape up and it pulls a clean line on the finish. Does
Mhm.
anybody else do that without, I used to scribe.
Uh,
I want you to do it without scribing.
Yeah.
I'm having really good luck with
Yeah. When I'm doing a new top, I will, if I'm going to put the bridge, if I know where the bridge is going to go, then I'll put frisket down, and at the end of the finished process, I will scribe, but I won't scribe on the actual outside edge of the frisket. I'll actually come in just a little bit. It's kind of like a little insurance policy, and then I'll pull inward. That seems to work pretty good. But you don't have to raise your hand, just shout it out, because I'm not watching. So this is what the pocketed bridge looks like in production after they have after the machine has gone on and routed it. It's actually not too bad. When they were first getting rolling, the machines were cutting in pretty deep.
Still makes pulling the bridge.
Yes. Okay. So here we go. We're talking about pulling the bridge. Okay. So if I have a pocketed bridge and I need to remove the bridge, and the bridge is well adhered, there is no lift. Well, I will not try and heat the bridge and get under there with a spatula, because if you've got the bridge, it's kind of real simple here. Here's the wing of the bridge, and there's your finish line. If you want to come in with a spatula, all you're going to do is hit the bridge. If you want to try and come in underneath it, what you're going to do is blow out all that nice clean edge there. So that doesn't work out too well.
So Pat, you're saying that in the pocketed bridge system,
Mhm.
the outline, the routed outline is exactly the edge of the bridge?
Yes. Yes.
There's no
Essentially,
step or-
it's
there's
in.
no step or rabbit on
Nope,
it.
nope.
Okay.
It's inlaid. It's an inlay.
Okay.
Just think of it as an inlay. Okay, so this is a jig that I made because, as we were talking a little while ago about the Collings guitars, where those are glued with a 400-degree release, I have to route them off. So I made this jig, which works just great for the Martins as well. It's just this little rubber pad here, and then a big hunk of 1/2-inch plexiglass. I did some quick routing one morning because there was a pick guard that was in my way, and I wanted this to sit flush and not contact that and cause it to kick.
Do you find that you gotta shim that when you put it on? Because sometimes the top, it's bellied or
It's bellied, yeah.
you want it to square to the-
No, what I found is that this little rubber material here sort of kind of mellows everything out and flattens it out. It's rubbery. It's not too thick, and it also keeps the plexiglass from shifting on me.
You're using that, I don't understand your function.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to route the bridge completely off while it's on the guitar. I'm going to turn the bridge into sawdust because I need to remove the bridge, but I don't want to damage the spruce.
That's what I do. I do it with my inlay tool.
Sure, yeah, there's so many different ways to do it. So this is just a laminate trimmer with a little router base, a 1/4-inch bit, and I step down little at a time, and I get to maybe 20 thousandths or so. It's pretty, when you get down that close, it's pretty hairy because you really, each time you're doing it, you're checking to make sure your router base is tight and it's not going to drift down anymore. but that does allow you to remove the bridge. And then again, here's one of my Watlow heating blankets. So when I've got it that thin, then I can usually just put some heat on it, and I'll go in and just chisel it from like the center. I'll kind of bring my chisel in here, and I'll just kind of go in this way. And what I'm kind of showing there a little bit is that feeler gauge is 20 thousandths, and it's flush with the actual top of the. So you know, with the actual lacquer might be 6 thousandths, 7 thousandths. So there's probably 13 thousandths of spruce that's been removed there.
I do something very similar, except I kind of go with my little inlay tool, take about a half an inch out,
Yep.
heat it, and that way I can get in underneath that way. But I'm not a big fan of the fire.
Sure. All right. So.
You could, route down a center section of the bridge and then go in from there with your spatula.
Sure. Yeah. I just kind of the way it works for me.
They got that fit really, really nice.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful, because when you get heat, a lot of times when you got to be careful. If you lift that up, it just takes the finish and blows it up.
Okay. So in production, got a couple more next to talk about, and only about 20 minutes. So in production, what they, those dovetails those are tough for in production to fit, and highly skilled workers work in neck fitting for dovetail joints. They're cranking out a lot of guitars, and they needed to come up with another method to put necks together that was not quite as time-consuming or needed quite as much intense labor. So they came out with what we call the mortise and tenon, which I'll pass this around here. You guys can check this out. And it was basically it was these two dudes. One of them was Michael Dresner. Michael Dresner is kind of a cool guy. He was one of the founders of ASIA, and the whole introduction of it was through this one model, the D1. It was a completely, at the time, I mean, Martin was a Martin. It was a dovetail and solid wood, everything. If you wanted something below, you'd have to get a Sigma or a Shenandoah or something like that. But this was kind of a big deal, because now they're like, okay, we're going to call this guitar a Martin, but we're going to make some features that are not consistent with how they had previously constructed them. And what Michael Dresner was trying to address was also a bit of the goofiness around the extension, how things were kind of kicking in or caving in. And they wanted to address that by changing the bracing. This was the patent. It was granted in '95. And more of the patent here. And the bracing is kind of different here. So you can see it's not typical. So you've got these sort of cantilevered, these little A's here. It definitely did help. It cut way down on fingerboard extension cracks. So it did work. So let's talk about that a little bit. Here's just a stack of them in production. These are the Stratobond necks, where they're laminated. These are actually pretty straight necks, and they're hard to carve. When you have to reset one of these, that's really hard wood in there. You ever done one of those, John?
Yeah, and I gotta agree with you. I have a Stratobond neck.
They're good necks, aren't they? Yeah.
They don't move.
They do not move. They're very good. That and the Rich Light of the micarta fingerboards, I really like. This is good stuff.
I like the Rich Light over the micarta.
Sure. Okay, so now how do you identify if a guitar, if it's a mortise and tenon? Well, you don't really know until you look in through the sound hole. If you look into the sound hole and you don't see that kind of traditional Martin block with the model number, stamped into it, and you see this little maple plate, well, you probably have a good idea that it's a mortise and tenon. And you can get in there with whatever you like. This is a little bent chisel that I use for pulling bridge plates, and you can get in there and pull that. It's just held on with some sticky foam tape, and that will access this quarter 20 bolt. Early production models did not have a lock washer behind that nut. Behind that bolt. They did eventually change. Oh, that's weird. So there is that lock washer that was later added in production. If you should work on one of these and it does not have a lock washer, put one in. Really important. When I'm steaming these necks off, I take an end pin and I put a little tape around the end pin, and I just jam it in there because I don't want steam going out that blowhole there. Okay, the neck. When you want to remove the neck, you've got to drill a hole like is typical for a steaming. And what I like to do is go 1/4 inch off the center line. The reason why you want to do that, and you don't want to put the hole out farther out, because if you put the hole farther out, you're just going to go into the body, and I'll explain. You'll see it in a second here. So there's me just drilling out that hole. Okay. It's kind of just looks like I just took the neck off and didn't bother cleaning it. But so the hole is going to be right about there, that drill hole that I did, right about there. If you go too far out with the drill hole, you're going to just drill. That drill is just going to go into here because you don't have that wide V. So you want to keep that 1/4 inch off. Here's one. Looks like I've cleaned up and getting ready to reset.
So there's just one bolt?
It's one bolt, but you know what Martin says is that the bolt is just there during the clamping process.
Oh, yeah.
But I really do, myself, I kind of rely on that bolt. If I back up here, well, if I go forward, I might be able to show you a little better. So it is glued on the cheeks here of this tenon. Okay, there's glue there. And you look at the heel block. The heel block is actually plywood, so there's a lot of end grain there. So you know, I'm not exactly sure how much of strength we're getting from that end grain glue joint. So
I totally agree.
Yeah.
You really rely on the screw more than
yeah, I do. But when I do refit the necks, I found that it's sloppy in there. So I'll add a maple shim to the cheeks of the tenon, and so that it really does fit in there tight. I don't treat it like just a bolt neck where I'm just going to bolt it in and hope that bolt holds. I really want some friction in there and gluing it back in. So there you can see the plywood that I'm talking about. See that plywood coming in? And they tend to use a lot of glue in production. It's a little sloppy. You can see all that glue. A lot of times I'll soften that and remove it so that when I'm fitting my neck, nothing's going to impede getting up against there. Okay, mortise and tenon precautions. Well, this is not necessarily a precaution, but this is something that you're going to see from time to time. You're going to see that bolt has loosened up. And what some guys will do, they'll go, oh, okay, all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that heel cap, that cover plate off. I'm going to get in there with a wrench and just turn that bolt. Well, that doesn't really work too well, and I don't advise doing that. Even if you are able to get in there and turn that bolt, I find that bolt may loosen. So really, you just need to pull the neck and refit the neck and add some shims, whatever you need to build that, to get a nice solid mortise and tenon joint going there.
But overall, is that a pretty decent
Yeah,
neck attachment
yeah, I'm okay with it,
system?
yeah.
Just longevity?
Yeah, I'm pretty okay with it. I think that the structure that they added in the bracing seems to be pretty good. It doesn't move that much.
Well,
So.
they used that how long?
Well, they started it in '93,
And then
and
15 years.
ended it in when they come up with the simple dovetail, and they still actually use this joint on all the Mexican
Yes.
guitars are still using.
When did they go through to the simple?
Oh, it's coming up.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. No, it's a great question. Okay, here's another mortise and tenon precaution. In the early production, the heel block was angled. You'll see what I mean in a second. There we go. Back to this one. Okay, so you see that right there? So if you are gluing the neck and you're using some type of a caul on the back of the guitar and, of course, on the top, you want to make sure that that caul that you use extends right out to the back, because if you just come in this area here, you'll crush that. Later in production, they went to a full-size block that goes all the way down, gives you a more sturdy gluing surface.
Why
But
would they even do that?
I don't know. The problem is that sometimes I'll ask them questions like that, and this is what I get. So I'm like, okay. Unless I could go back in the archives and find the actual production notes or, you know, the meeting notes.
You said when you're reviewing that, you would just use a extended call.
Yeah, I do anyways, but yeah, the call that I use, I just make sure that the call extends out past the back, you know, and really make sure that it's not just favoring the underside where you can see there's no support.
You wouldn't worry about putting a wedge in there?
No, it's not. It's when you do squeeze a mortise and tenon in, it's not a lot of resistance. You know, it's not like doing a dovetail where you really want to kind of push things in and drive things in. It's not that much of a force. So there's just one more shot of that angled heel block with the back off the guitar. Okay, another concern with the mortise and tenons as you're pulling them out, and when you pull them out, I tend to pull up and out this way. So it's not like a dovetail where I'm just going to go straight up. Because it's a mortise and tenon, there's no dovetail, there's no angle to prevent you from pulling. So I tend to pull out a little bit at the same time. But what I found is quite often is that this little piece of binding, the way they use so much adhesive in there, this little piece of binding likes to travel when you're pulling it. So just be aware of it. And as it's happening, I just get like a little thin feeler gauge in there to try and break that glue joint, and that's all.
You find that these things were finished and then joined, right? When they were made?
They're finished separately. Is that what
Yeah.
you're asking? Like, yeah.
I mean, I find that sometimes if you take finish and you squeeze it together, it'll sort of heal.
Oh yeah. These are completely finished, cured, and then.
I mean, so you have to break the finish even though it's finished separately?
Nope.
No.
It was the three brands that I work on have separate neck body finishing procedures. So, and that might be one of the reasons why I only work on those three. I don't know. Okay, so this is very easy to recognize that, okay, this is a mortise and tenon. Okay, anybody, any ideas on what kind of neck this would be?
Dave Matthews.
That's why they're here. You have a phone call.
Dave Matthews, signature model. If you look in there, you might say, well, that's a dovetail because I don't see that plate.
Yeah, there was that plate, just a big veneer.
But yeah, now if you look, you can see a little bit of that laminated heel block up there.
It's full size.
It's a full size. And now look around the corner. So this got me one time years ago because you don't get the newsletter. You know, they don't have a newsletter to tell you these things. So I was steaming it off. I was figuring, well, it's a signature model. It's got to be, you know, a high-end model. So I'm steaming it off, and it's not moving. I couldn't understand what was going on. So then I really spent some time looking inside there, and I said, oh, wait a minute. It's just stuck on there. So you pull that off. Or you pull that off and it's just a bolt. So it's a mortise and tenon disguised, as a more traditional style. So many of the signature models have that. And putting that plate back on, this is just that 3M foam tape that I use. That's all that is. Here's another signature model. It's a full-size plate. What year is that? Yeah, they just cleared 1 million. I don't know Martin serial numbers that well. I just look it up on my chart.
Probably about a 13.
Probably, yeah, in the teens. Okay, so now we get to the simple dovetail. We'll go through this pretty quick. Okay, so in production they decided that, okay, this whole thing of having people fit necks on our lower price models, maybe we want to go with a different system where we're going to actually let a CNC machine do it. And that's what they did. And it started around production 1,500,000. And if you do go to remove one of these, you'll find that there is no 1/4-20 brass screw under that ID plate. But when you do reset the neck, go back and put one in. They don't use one, but I found that it's really a good idea to put one in. I'm going to send around a simple dovetail.
And be very careful when you're working the spatula.
Yes. Oh yeah, we'll totally get into that. We're getting close to time, so I'm just going to blow through this. But. Okay, this is the This is the machine that does all the work.
You have one of these in your shop?
No, I got a chisel. So they got one of those deals there. I saw it one time, and I was not interested in it. It didn't matter to me. Okay, very quickly, I do want to just show you that here's the tenon right here, okay, and the heel block. There is this little step right here that we're going to get into, and you're going to see it. When you are recarving this to change the neck angle, you've got to blow that step out because that tenon is right up against there. I'll show you with better photos, but we're going to talk about it quick. Here it is here. So here's the route for the mortise and tenon. One of the things that I like about it is that now there's a new truss rod that they've used, and I think you guys have probably seen the truss rod. It came out about the same time, a little earlier, I think. But with the new truss rod, they actually keep that popsicle brace intact. So we have a much shorter removal of finish or of wood under the extension, which is great. Okay, here's the deal. When you are, that computer, what it does, after the guitar is finished, the guitar reads the current geometry of that particular body, and it decides how much wood to remove so that the mortise and tenon can just be fit right into the body. There's no handwork that's done. And so what you can see is, boy, it goes in quite a bit. Quite a bit. And that neck will just drop right into there. Here's another shot of it, and yeah, it's quite a bit. There's a neck that I removed. Looks like it came out pretty clean.
Is that like almost setting the neck angle by routing into the body?
It's exactly what it's doing. What it's doing is the computer is reading the geometry of it, and it's deciding how much wood to remove off of the body to.
So the heels are all standard.
Yeah, as far as I understand, they're not changing those. Here's another shot, and boy, I mean, this one's pretty deep, you know?
So when you go to reset that, do you take it from the body, or do you take it from the neck first?
I take it from the neck. I take it from the neck, and fortunately, the curvature of the way the heel is, when you remove it, it doesn't show that much. And also, because the neck is, the heel is set in here a little bit, that doesn't have to be as super clean as you normally would have it if it was like a button sitting on top, because it's going to be recessed in, so it almost kind of hides any little goofiness, you know, as you're going in. Okay, I was talking about that little part that needs to be removed because it can interfere with the movement of when you want to. Basically, the tenon is going to get pushed in. When you're resetting the neck, obviously the tenon is going in deeper this way. And if you look, you can see this little secondary route right there. That has to be chiseled out. Not quite so much here because you're really not removing any wood there, but you're removing wood down in this area here. So you just want to get in there and hog that out. So you can see that new truss rod that Martin started doing. One of the benefits of that truss rod is it's removable. You can pull it out and put a new one in if you have to. They can be a little tricky to get out, but they are. They're not glued in.
And that's pretty much what we see production mostly over there today?
Well, do you mean that truss rod? Or yeah, that truss rod, yes. And the simple dovetail is on, for the most part, it's on all guitars from style 16 down. Or 17 down, and a lot of the signature models. Anything that was a mortise and tenon before is probably now a simple dovetail.
Simple dovetail kind of just means dovetail shaped mortise and tenon.
Exactly. Yep. I don't know if the neck has come around, but yeah, when you look at it, it's a. So the idea about pulling the neck on that is that the neck has to come. The neck has to come straight out like a traditional dovetail. You can't pull it out through the sides, you follow me? Because it's, okay, when you're removing the neck, when you're steaming it, it has to come straight out of the top. It can't come out sideways.
That's where the neck pulling jig comes in very handy.
Yes, and here's another shot of that little part here that I'm talking about. You can see it right there, riding along there. I know when I did my first one, I was like, why, you know, I'm trimming the heel, and it's not going, I'm not getting it in. I was like, what's holding it up? And then I realized that it was that little part right there that was creating all the goofiness. Here it is now. So now you can really see what I'm talking about. So here's the end of the tenon. You see how it's contacting right there? That was the issue that I was having. that's the end of the show. So, I'll be around if you got any more questions.
I learned a lot from you today.
Oh, thank you.
Where does it do all the